Teddy, darling, Teddy, have you got something you'd like to say? Oh, yes, that's lovely, wonderful.
Hi,
Um,
Teddy.
are you ready to introduce? You ready? Good, thank you. So this is hello and welcome to Pet Talk with me, Anna, and your name. Remember, we say your name at this point. Teddy. Thank you very. And so now we talked about our guest. Can you remember her name? You can't remember her name just now. Okay. Should we jog your memory a little bit? It is Donna. And do you remember the other name? Yep, that's it. It is Donna Wills. Hello, Donna. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Anna. I really appreciate it. And it's lovely to meet you, Teddy.
Teddy is he's very chatty, so it I figured he would like to take part in our conversations always. So here we are, and you are here because you've written a really, goodness me, heartfelt, emotional, um, extraordinary. There's lots of words I can come up with. Book, and it's called The Best Goodbye. And
It is. Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
no, it is really a very extraordinary book. So I think we're going to start with the title, The Best Goodbye. And I'm going to ask you to explain the title because I think that will be a good way to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, yeah, definitely thank you for having me to be able to talk about this conversation as well, because obviously goodbyes are never something that we as a culture like discussing in any way, shape, or form, no matter what that form of goodbye takes. And for me, with this book, my idea of the best goodbye, well, where this book came from is my absolute heart and soul. It is my memoir. It was me started out with verbal vomiting all over my pages as I was just having to like try and deal with my own emotions. And it ended up being incredibly cathartic. And I realized that I had given my dog the final gift, the best gift I could, the gift of the best goodbye, the best I could do for him at the end. And so that was the only fitting title I could come up with, because I was like, it is literally the final gift. And so I'm very proud of that. But I did feel I needed to share it for the masses, so that everybody else could well, see that they're not alone in that whole awful journey. And yes, there's lots to talk and unpack here, definitely.
There, it is something to be proud of when we are able to recognize that our beautiful friends are ready to be released and that we help them to do that. So I'm sure everybody's guessed what we're talking about here. It is those final moments of life that we have to witness um, when our animals are dying. So tell us more about it because your book is just this gorgeous story about your relationship with your dog. How many times have you had to have had to go through this experience of saying goodbye?
Oh, I mean, over the years, quite a few times, and yeah, I do go through all of that in my book, my whole background on this, because I will also say that each goodbye is not the same. They are all unique and all different, and so it's okay for you to have a different set of emotions each time as well. So to put a number on it, it's really, really hard, because I have had lots of love and loss through my life, and they've been all different. I mean, I've had several dogs that I have lost. I've had a pig, a sheep, a budgie, hamsters, gerbils, all these sorts of things, and some people as well. So they're all very different. I will definitely say this: Logan was that was the hardest. That was the absolute hardest. And for me, I think that's largely because he was solely mine my entire time. Like, he wasn't like the family dog or anything like that. He was absolutely 100% mine and my family's. You know, he literally was there for the birth of my child and my husband coming into my life and all that sort of thing. I mean, Logan had to give the seal of approval for all of that, you know. So all of those things make you so much more connected. That one was really hard, and I would say harder than any of the human loss I've gone through as well. And it's, yeah, each journey is so unique, and I think that it's definitely worth acknowledging that for everybody else out there as well, is that, you know, each journey is not the same for you as an individual, but also for the people around you. So, you know, because it's hard for sometimes for people to relate to, like, somebody else has lost their dog and they're like, well, why are they so upset? It's just a dog. Or, I mean, I hate that sentence, but, you know, those are not my people that say that. But these things happen because they just don't get it. They've not had that same moment, and then, you know, they will at some point, hopefully. Hopefully, because it means they've had a beautiful relationship, not hopefully because they feel in pain. But to have that level of love, I think is also a gift, you know.
Yes, and what you said about it being different each time is so true, because I've been through this 4 times, and each time was incredibly unique. There is nothing similar about any of those animal deaths I've been through. And then, of course, you know, there was the loss of my father as well, which is something else again. So I've had 5 losses. Each have affected me differently. But the thing about, you know, that you said about Logan is that people often don't understand the intimacy that exists between that can exist between people and animals,
Yeah,
because they've not experienced it. And it's that they are a constant
yeah,
in our lives.
absolutely. And you know, at the end of the day, when it comes to humans and human relationships, there's often conflict somewhere along the line. Someone's annoyed you for not doing the washing up, at the very least, you know. Whereas it comes to our furry friends, there generally isn't much conflict, because even if they stole your donut, you don't tend to really hate them for it, you know. And so that relationship's just so much closer. And then for me also, that relationship is a constant need. You're always looking after them. They're not, you know, asking for a lift and can I have 20 quid and then off out with their friends. And, you know, the relationship is always it is like a baby, because they're always in need. And, you know, even in, it's not their high dependency time, that's fine, but they still need you to take them for walks, let them out, feed them, all that stuff all the time. And I think that's what grows that connection. And then later on, when it becomes their grey years, that level of need becomes even higher. I mean, for me, Logan was a very high dependency dog in the end for quite some time. When I lost him, that was some of my grief, was the guilt for having my time back and thinking, oh my God, I've got all this time back and I actually need it. And then I felt so bad for appreciating that. But I didn't also realize how much of my time I had given to him, you know, and I chose to, and I would choose to do it again. There's no regret there at all, but it's insane. And I mean, I also lost a lamb a couple of years ago, and the lamb was only 2 weeks old. And I share this story because this is another unique example where we got so connected, because the lamb came to me as a quadriplegic, because I'm an animal physio and a vet nurse as well. And so I was getting that lamb going. I was so proud. I got it walking in a week, and it hadn't been walking for 2 weeks. It was just the most incredible story. And so many people were invested in that lamb around me as well. And, you know, I mean, we were doing physio on it hourly, like between us as a family. So we were all so invested in helping this lamb. We were so proud. And then after 2 weeks, it got bloat, which is the biggest killer of lambs. And it was so sad because it was totally unrelated. And, you know, for most people, a lamb that age, actually, they just eat it because that's dinner. You know, it really is. And they'll just put it in the oven and think nothing of it. But for us, we were devastated, and we took it down to the individual crematorium, had him cremated. We've got his ashes back. They sit next to Logan's. You know, he was another one of our family, despite the fact we only had him for 2 weeks. But he had that high level of need and care, and the connection you get through that is huge. We have got all our chickens. They get so connected as well. I think it's a real gift to be able to open your mind and see an animal for more than just a furry thing that walks around. They are such big people, and I call them big people because I think it's the only way to relate to their mind. They are amazing. We just have to open our eyes to see that. And then when you get connected like that, you cannot help but grieve hugely. And we need to talk about that.
Absolutely. And there's a number of things in what you've said, and the issue of dependency is one of them. Um, because you're right, there is a bond that happens as a result of that, as there is between, a parent and a child. Obviously, dogs don't choose to be dependent on this. We make them dependent on us. But nevertheless, that is the situation. And they give us a lot too. And so I think that when we're talking about dependency, when the dog is not just a dog in a person's eyes, it is a whole heap of things more. Teddy has a job. He's the morale officer of the family. We didn't give him that job. It just happens that he's really, really good at it. And so, I might as well have created a little badge that says morale officer because that's what he does. That's his gift to us, is
Yep.
that he's fun. He has an imagination because he invents games. He's been inventing games since, he's a puppy. So I'll teach him something. He turns it into a game. And before I know it, he's in charge of the game. So, he's incredibly creative that way. And there's so much more that animals, like Teddy will give. He makes everybody smile. He brings his love to everybody. And that comes back to the simplicity of the relationship. Because, yeah, he can, if he's not happy about having his teeth checked, he'll let you know. And yeah, he might nip you if you don't pay attention. But he's not holding grudges. We had to put eardrops in because he had an ear infection, and oh my, he needed a muzzle.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and it broke my heart every time I had to do this because I knew how much he hated it. But he didn't hold it against me. He
And
didn't.
that's the beauty of a great relationship. You know, dogs are incredibly forgiving. It's crazy. I mean, some do, some carry trauma, absolutely. And that comes from different resilience, obviously, in exactly the same way as it does for people. So we have to be mindful of that. But at the end of the day, you're absolutely right. They trust you, they will forgive you. And that is, it's actually quite sad, really, from a rescue point of view, because the things that some dogs go through and then are absolutely amazing at the end of it. You just think, how are you amazing? But,
It's it's different from the point of view that in one situation, this is not an intentional abuse situation, or compared to others, and then that creates a trauma. Um, did Teddy is Teddy happy to go to the vet? No, he's not, and it's like a last resort event. But it's the point here is the simplicity of the relationship and the fact that on the whole, in a normal relationship that doesn't involve abuse, they are very forgiving. And
yeah,
we all wants to be forgiven, and
yeah.
them. So they want us to forgive them too when they do things like steal something from the counter. And, you know, so this is the simplicity that adds to the complexity of the relationship, as
Yes, exactly.
or the intensity of the relationship. So you also talked about the lamb. Now that's interesting too, because that's also about, some would say that's our egos, wanting to be the rescuer. But I don't think it is that. I think it's about the investment of time and love and the desire to see him thrive.
A
Snap.
hundred percent the second one, yes. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, from an ego point of view, yeah, of course, it's amazing I got that lamb walking again. And I am allowed to be proud of that because I worked really hard and I know that that lamb hadn't been able to walk before that. And despite the farmer's best efforts, that had not been able to be happened, which is why I offered to take it on. And ultimately, that whole journey came from a position of love because the farmer wasn't going to get anything back for that situation. She just genuinely, it's this double-edged sword of that is another discussion really, isn't it? But, she just wanted to do best by that lamb because that lamb clearly wanted to live. And that's literally her words. He just wants to live. So therefore she decided that instead of doing what would be the easy scenario in a farming situation, she asked for help, which I thought was actually wonderful. And, I decided to step in, help out, and take it on completely on my own. Had I expected to get so invested emotionally? No, of course you don't. I've had decades in this career and I have to be quite careful of my emotional investment. So no, I didn't expect to get so emotionally invested, but I did. And so did my family. And that's because the personalities in these animals comes flying out at you. And it became like having 3 dogs in the house. I literally had like 2 border collies and a lamb just wagging their tails at me when I came home from work. It would be like, what is that? That's the most bonkers, surreal thing I think I've ever seen. And, and having my border collies just playing with my lamb, they weren't doing any rounding up or any of those sorts of behaviors that you typically think of. They genuinely were just like, oh, cool, we've got a white thing now. Okay, fine. That's just one of us. And they're exactly the same with the chickens. Everyone just gets on. It's really quite Disney here. It's lovely. Yeah, it's for me for sure, and I don't really think anyone who works in the animal industry can work for anything other than wanting to love and wanting to do the best they can, because there's an awful lot out there to not make you feel like that. So yeah, we definitely do this for love, and the achievement is obviously wonderful, but that's because of the outcome.
You said something that I think is at the heart of when we need to make decisions that are life death decisions. And you said the lamb wanted to live.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the thing that tears us apart when we're faced with the possibility of terminating the life of a loved animal, because we don't want to feel like we're committing murder.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we want to relieve the suffering, and there's only one way to do that. I've only been in that situation once, and I was very clear. I needed to be absolutely sure that my cat was ready to go. How do you gauge this? What happened with you?
I mean, this is such a personal journey. So I will never tell anybody that I know the answers, and I will never tell anybody that their journey has to mirror mine. But I have shared my journey, and that was the whole reason why I wrote this book, was so that everybody could see. And this is why I wrote the book for me. But then when I'd finished it, I realized that actually this needs to be for everybody. And that's why I put it out there. And it really was like bearing my bum in public, because it's so personal. And so that's what I'm trying to say. This journey is so personal and so unique for everybody. And I just want it to be really clear that we should not be passing judgment on anybody, because everybody is different and their stories are different and their history is different. So my book goes right the way through, from my history as a child with my animals through to my connection with Logan, why I got so connected, how he was part of my world for such a long time, as I mentioned, with getting the husband and the makeups and breakups and the child and all this stuff, and all those cute little stories that just helped us get connected. But I then go on to talk about how, I sort of was in this pre-grief zone where you actually know that they're going to be coming to this time and you're grieving already, but you don't really know it. So you're busy burying your head in the sand. And then me realizing that actually I need to stop doing that and I need to actually sort this out and making a plan. And I made a plan long before it was actually his time. And do you know what? That made me feel so much better, because one of my big fears was that it would all go wrong. It would all be horrible. It would all be an awful emergency, and there was no planning, and I wouldn't know what to do. But it took acknowledging the worry to be able to fix that problem. And I'll be completely honest, my vets were all amazing. I actually was signed up to 4 different vets in the hope that one of them will be able to come out and do a home visit. And they all knew that. Like, I was open and honest. My problem was, for me, it had to happen at home. And I got that all organised in place, and I was really happy. And I mean, I was still always worried that it might actually happen as an emergency and might actually be an overnight thing. And, you know, I will absolutely acknowledge that I was privileged to be able to have it at home. I know that. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't try to prepare for that if possible. And then when it finally came that it was time and he needed to, like, I could see that he was struggling, because every illness will show in a different way. So for him, he had like doggy Parkinson's, so his balance was getting really bad and stuff like that. And so at the last sort of couple of weeks, he could still walk forwards, with lots of like me balancing him. And that was fine. I didn't have a problem with that. And he was still able to walk forwards, still have a meaningful walk. And he could still sniff and catch in the air. And we would go and wrap up warm and take the buggy out so he could get to where he needed to be. And then we'd sit by the lake and do cool stuff. So it was still very meaningful. When I decided it was time was because actually he was then no longer able to actually get moving forwards. So if he stood, you would just stand there and he'd look like Logan. You'd think nothing was wrong. But if he walked, he had no balance at all. And, you know, so it was like, actually, I think this is probably it. So I wasn't ready to, like you said, have it wrong. I couldn't be wrong. So I wanted to give him a few days to be able to actually, you know, just in case he was going to come good. So it was like a Tuesday, and I booked it for the Friday, so that it gave him a good few days, but without risking that weekend period. And each day I reassessed, spoke to the husband. Do you think this is right? Do you think this is right? Do you think this is right? And we both always came to the same conclusion that it is. And it was good to have those few days, because we were able to manage him. He wasn't in pain. He was absolutely fine. It just required us to do lots of care. And so I say, be really careful to be kind to yourself, because if you work in a full-time job, I mean, me and my husband do both work and both full-time, but we work from home. So we were able to provide a level of care that I know that if I was away in an office, I wouldn't have been able to do. So we had that privilege again. And so we did that, and I booked for his funeral, because our crematorium actually does what we call an attended funeral. And I was beyond thrilled to have that, because it meant I could be with my boy's case for as long as needed, or as long as I wanted, and not have to, because I needed to know that he was being looked after with the utmost respect. And I'm not saying the professionals wouldn't have done that, but I needed to know that it was being done. And so I booked that with the understanding that I could cancel if anything needed to be cancelled. I booked all of it on the understanding that it could be cancelled. But, you know, the day came, and it was still the right thing to do. So we absolutely had it right. But it also gave us time for our heads to come round. And it meant also that we could have some beautiful last days that are planned for. And what I mean by that is, we went out and we went to Heath Lake, went out in the buggy, we get a picnic together, and me and my husband sat down and we all sat and ate it, and have some beautiful photos of Logan looking over the lake. And it was just a really nice moment. And I bought some sausages from the butcher's, and I absolutely can't go anywhere near that butcher's anymore. I mean, it's fine, I'm vegetarian, but the point is, like it's such a trigger now. But I'd done that, and on the very last day, when I was planning how it was going to look, so I'd put a bed out. I had gone and on his last walk, I'd collected loads of foliage from around his walk. So, because I always say foliage is like doggy Facebook, it's like checking in with the socials. So he could surround himself with all that he knew. And so those smells were put around him on his bed. And I had like some essential oils and some pet remedy and all the various things that helped to make the environment as lovely as possible, and had music playing and all this stuff. And It was really beautiful, and I felt good that I was able to provide that for him. I mean, yeah, that might come down to the ego thing, but I don't really care. I wanted to make sure that I'd provided everything that I could to make sure that it was that best goodbye. And I genuinely believe that I could only do that because I was prepared and because I'd have been able to have a sensible head. And the sensible head came from being prepared. So that's why I strongly urge people to try not to ignore the pain of what we know is coming and ignore that pain that we know is coming and just accept it so that we can do better, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, and I remember I did not plan like you did, but I I had no reason to suspect that I was going to need to do this, in fact. But a few days before, my partner just had an instinct and said, "We need to find a vet who does home visits and who can come and help us if we need it." And I thought, no, no, we're not going to need this. But I did as he asked. I found a vet. Little did I realize that about 3 days later, I was going to be phoning her because our cat, I realized now, had a stroke. And
Wow.
she was deaf to begin with, but she now was also blind. And the vet said, okay, well, it's a Saturday. I can't get out there until Monday, but it's a good thing because she might be okay. Sunday morning, I saw her give up. I just saw her give up. We had done all sorts of things to make things easier for her, to help her adjust, but I saw her give up. I could see she'd given up. I can feel it. And I thought, okay. And she just deteriorated to the point where we were counting the hours for the vet to come. She was she was so ready to go.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, and it's great you touched on that because that was a scenario that a lot of people describe to me is when will I know? When will I know? And you want it to be that moment that you've had a clear sign. And you and your husband are clearly very perceptive, by the way. I can be incredibly hippie when I want to be. And, your husband, he had some insight there. Something happened and good for him. That moment was required. Well done. And you are looking obviously at your cat as well and seeing that is such an, seeing your cat's emotion is absolutely huge. For me, my situation was the complicated one, the one that's so painfully uncomfortable because actually Logan didn't want to go, like, as in, he was like, yeah, I look after my mom. That's what I do. And, if you, like I said to you, when he was stood, he'd still be ears picked and he'd be like, yeah, I'm good. And actually, even when he was, being euthanized, I'll never forget it because Logan was still Logan. He did an air snap at the vet, and I was like, "Good for you." And the vet was like, "Do you want to muzzle him?" I was like, "No, of course not." He was fine. I had him. It wasn't a problem at all. That was his usual spirit in there, and I was really proud of him for that. And that was actually a real emotional turmoil because on one hand, I wanted him to be like this sad little one that is, I know it's the time. But on the other hand, I didn't want him to get to that zone. So it's really hard because you don't know what to do and you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. For me, I looked at his quality of life and realized that if he can't walk without falling over, then his quality of life is going to go downhill so quickly that there is no value in waiting for that moment to happen because that's all I'm waiting for. And so for me, I decided that, but that doesn't mean it's the same choice for everybody. And I am more than aware of how complicated home lives can be. And there are a million reasons why people might make the choices that they make. And so I would never judge anybody for whatever choices they make. And I do think that people just need to be really perceptive, open-minded, and just try to listen to the situation.
Yeah, and watch them because and this is the same, when you're watching people and you know that their time is coming.
Yeah.
And some of them are letting go and they are going to and they want their family around them, and others, or they don't want anybody around them. They seem to wait until that moment when the last person has just gone to the toilet or has gone home for a nap because they can't be there anymore without, falling down, and then they slip away. It's really difficult. Some deaths are very prolonged because the person is hanging in there. Others, it's easier. This is such a difficult one to call. Animals are no different, and it's just one of those things. I remember our first cat. We brought our mattress down into the sitting room so that she didn't have to go upstairs. In the last week of her life, we slept downstairs with her, and when it was her time, she took herself into the kitchen to die on her own. She didn't, we woke up and she wasn't on the bed with us, or I should say, on the mattress with us. And we thought, where's she gone? And we found that she was in the kitchen. She'd gone into the kitchen. So it's different. And we're having to play God without the extra sensory ability to see the whole picture. So we're doing our best to protect our beloved animals from suffering, and I think and trying to get it right. So it's a very tricky thing. What do you do when you are in those immediate moments after, or in immediate days after? How do you get through that? Because it's such an excruciating experience.
It's horrendous. I mean, crying is definitely the top of the agenda. And accepting that it's okay to cry is the top of the agenda. In my book, I do actually have a 17-point list of things to help you through this. And it does encompass the fact that obviously being prepared but part of being prepared is helping you for the aftermath, which is horrendous. There's no denying that. The whole thing's horrendous. The whole of this subject is all horrendous. Afterwards, I mean, you're going to be hit by a ton of emotion. I had pain like I can't even describe. Like, my whole body ached. My face ached. I always suggest to people that you have a lot of lip balm around and a lot of water, because you're going to be so dehydrated, your face is going to swell, and you need a lip balm because, wow, do they get sore. And your nose, your moisturizer. Oh my God. I genuinely, I know it sounds really bonkers. It's one thing no one ever thinks about, but just have facial moisturizer around, because you will need it. But also I do say, like, warn your neighbors. If you've got their phone numbers, just text them and let them know. Because if you want to talk to them, great. But if you don't, then it's much nicer to just message them and say, I've just lost my dog, which is what I did. Just lost my dog. Please don't talk to me. Because I didn't want, when I was carrying Logan outside to go to the crematorium, I did not want them to be like, oh, what you got there? Because obviously he's all wrapped up in a blanket. I didn't need a conversation at that point. So I texted them and said, stay out of the way. And they were great about it. And I did text a few other friends to let them know. And they were great about it, because they bought me care packages and they just put them on the door. Like, they bought around like hot noodles and lavender bubble bath and, a book for my daughter and stuff like that. So you should reach out to friends, because you will be amazed how much people do care and come and help you. And you need that. And if you've got kids, that also needs to be a consideration, because I mean, again, that's something I talk about in my book. I had a 6-year-old at the time, and how she handled it was all very different to what we did. And I needed something to do. I needed something to distract me from the pain, because I was wailing. And all the foliage that I'd gone to put around Logan, I actually decided to make it into a bouquet. So I made it into this lovely bouquet, and I literally hot glued on his tennis balls and a few little things. And my husband, I gave him this like little wooden like plaque thing I just happened to have, because that's what you have when you got a kid around, you got stuff. So and I told him to sit and write a message on there, which gave him something to do. And then so together we ribboned it up and made it all lovely, and we were able to put that on Logan. And these are all personal choices. This is where it's your personal journey as to what you do and how you cope. Some people will want to be on their own, other people don't want to be on their own. Have a cup of tea with a friend if you can, but I mean, just make sure there's options. And also please know that there are professionals out there that can help. There are professional pet bereavement counselors. There is the Blue Cross do their bereavement service. There are people out there, because this is really hard. And if it was easy, these people wouldn't exist. And they've got whole businesses for a reason. So, do reach out. Don't think you're on your own. And equally, your vets, they will know of people to help. And often they've got somebody who's bereavement trained within the practice. So I'm saying this so you're not on your own, because that pain is horrendous. I mean, I remember I fell asleep, not because I did that nice, I'm falling asleep now thing. It's because I just passed out. I absolutely passed out, and it was horrendous. And then I woke up so much pain. I'd say my body ached so badly. And then, eventually I had to catch my sleep up. But, reaching out to people, it was really helpful. So I obviously, I'm an animal physiotherapist as well now. So I messaged my admin assistant, who then contacted all of my clients and just cancelled them all. And they were so good about it. My clients were my rock. They were incredible. So yeah, the aftermath is horrendous. Try to be prepared. Lots of water. A few simple meals in the house is really helpful as well. And some distraction options for you. Something that will get your mind into some other zone. Sudoku, going to the gym, whatever it is that works for you, to make sure that you can have something to give your brain a bit of a rest, because you can't cry solidly. It's too hard, even though you'll want to. But also, I just want to take this time to say, grief doesn't stop, and it's not linear. It goes up in waves, and it's literally one moment you're fine, the next minute you're not, and that will keep going for however long it will be. I still have moments where I'm still teary. And this book was actually written 2 years after I lost Logan, when I was triggered yet again and started crying yet again. Because this time of year is just a trigger, because the weather always reminds me of how it felt when it happened. So I wrote this because I was triggered, and then I started crying, and then I was like, oh, Donna, why are you crying? It's been 2 years. And then I was like, hang on a minute, I'm allowed to cry. I loved him. And then I was going round in circles, and my guts were going nuts. And I was like, right, I need to do something. So that's what I say. I literally verbal vomited. I just wrote everything I could down onto a piece of paper. And then I realized I needed to write properly. So the next day I started typing. I wrote this book in less than a month because I had so much to write, and I had to get it out. I had to. So yeah. And again, that's another method for coping. Journaling.
I think we all grieve differently as well. Some people will just, all they want to do is talk about, the person or the animal they have just lost. And I went through a phase where, and for each of them, where I was just flooded with memories. It was almost like I was watching a film of our lives together. And meanwhile, I think my partner was having the same, but not with such intensity. And he didn't really appreciate me saying, do you remember this? Do you remember that? Because for him, that was a painful thing. For me, it was like a comforting thing. And so we also have to feel our way around each other. It's a very important thing. And I would say we also need to allow ourselves to keep the connection, because
100%.
a lot of the work I do with my clients around bereavement is almost about giving them permission, or telling them that they can give themselves permission to keep the connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
That it's not about moving on. And in animals' cases, are you going to get another one? Just maybe, maybe not. I'm not going to
Yeah.
get another one, because no other one will be like this one. I will possibly, maybe, when I'm ready, at some point in the future, consider maybe
Yeah.
allow
Exactly.
another one of that species into my life. But right at this moment, no, it's not what I want to do.
It's
Um,
too hard to talk about, isn't it?
hard.
To think
It's
about.
hard, and there's feelings of loyalty and disloyalty, and so there's all of that. But that's for the future. In the throes of the pain, what we want to know is we're allowed to keep connection. And for each of my cats, I had the sleeping urn. I have the sleeping urn with their ashes in. And I found that the only comfort I had was carrying that urn around with me around the house. Not outside of the house, but around the house.
Oh no, I'm going to totally reflect here and absolutely have your back. So, your connection word is absolutely right. So, for my husband, his journey was that he wrote down those memories straight away because he had a little scrap of paper, loads of scraps of paper actually next to the bed, where that would be when the memories popped in, and he always wrote them down because he didn't want to forget them, and that's what he needed. So, although he would talk to me and I would happily listen because I loved talking about Logan, he wanted to write them down. So that's what he did. And he still has that all in his bedside right now. And now here's the bit where I'm going to agree with you 100% about connection and allowing yourself. When we went on our family holiday after this, which would have been, I mean, a good 6 months afterwards, we arrived at the holiday cottage. And my husband just was a bit weirdly coy. I was like, what's he doing? That's weird. And he'd gone to the boot of the car and he got out Logan's urn. And he could not handle going on holiday without our boy because we had not done that before, ever, ever. And so I was like, and I just smiled and
Yep.
obviously had a little cry myself because I wanted that too. And it was so lovely. And we just put out his urn on the window sill of the place in the living room. And it was just beautiful. And for us, I mean, I've got various items of jewelry that I have, so he is with me all the time. But I cannot tell you how special that was and how much I realized that me and my husband just the same person because it was just wonderful.
Yeah. How
And so yeah, and to this day, he will still get Logan out of the window and put him on the sofa next to him and have a little cuddle watching the TV at night, which is just
it's tangible.
lovely.
It's the tangible connection.
Yeah.
We can, you know, I also would talk to my cats, after they were gone for some time because I do believe that they are still around. But it also was and then there comes the time eventually when I'm not doing that anymore. There came the time eventually where I didn't need to have their urn with me as I moved around the house. It happens in time. But I'll tell you
Yeah.
what I have got, which goes round wherever I go. And that is, I have a little bag with a cut of their fur
Mm.
and bits of their claws that I found around the house afterwards. And that is in a little purse that goes with me everywhere. So if I'm going on holiday, that will come with me. I don't have it around me all the time but it's in the house. It's by my bedside and it comes with me when I'm not staying in the house. That's the thing. So I think what we are both wanting to say is that our animals who are in our lives are a part of us. They're
Yeah.
part of the family. And sometimes that closeness is so huge that it's like they are part of our bodies.
It's energy, and I
And the
firmly think that.
and the pain of loss is massive. It's like a part of us has been torn away from ourselves. It can feel very visceral and very physical, as it does with people too, because loss is loss. And that there are things we can do to soften the blow, and that when the time comes, there are things we can do to help ourselves deal with that pain. And so I remind everyone that the book we are talking about is called The Best Goodbye. And Donna, I thank you for your book and I thank
Thank you
you
so
for
much.
your time. I'll be putting a link to that in the description box. If people want to find you, Donna, how do they do that?
I've got my website, which is www.animalphysiotherapy.org.uk. And if you do a / the best goodbye, you will see the book there. But yeah, go on my website. That's where you find me most. But there's a Facebook page and Insta page, and the book can be got on all the usual outlets as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me and talking about this.
It's a very important subject. Thank you. And thank you all for watching. I am going to be putting a link in the description box for everything, every way that you can find Donna, and also my Substack, where you will find the occasional story about the Mummy and Teddy adventures. Until next time, goodbye.